The galaxy had seen countless wonders, yet nothing prepared it for the morning the human infant opened his eyes amidst three snarling, glittering albino dwarf dragons. For centuries, the outer realms had whispered the draconic wilds, a lawless expanse where only the boldest or the most foolish survived. No human had ever entered it and returned, not alive, not whole. Yet here in the heart of the violet mist and jagged crystal peaks, a single human baby lay asleep, curled against the scales of three dragons. Their eyes, milky white and glowing faintly, studied him with suspicion, teeth bare but unstriking. The humans observing from the hidden cliffs could hardly breathe. Colonel Reyna Vox, leader of the exploratory fleet, whispered, "Impossible. He cannot survive this. Yet he sleeps." The dragons, born predators of unimaginable cunning, had been terrorizing the outer colonies for generations. Every warrior who tried to hunt them had vanished. Yet the child, now a year old, lay among them, entirely calm. Hours passed. The winds howled, carrying shards of crystallized mist like slicing blades. The dragons shifted restless, but none dared touch the fragile human. Then the unimaginable happened. The infant rolled onto his back and let out a laugh, a sound so pure, so defiant, that it echoed across the mountains and even reached the ears of distant scouting ships. The dragons froze. Something inside them shifted, ancient instincts giving way to curiosity and awe. Reyna Vox clenched her fists. "Human resilience is not a myth," she muttered. Word of the child spread across the colonies in hours. Scientists argued, philosophers debated, and soldiers prepared for the impossible. Theories emerged. Was he born with a connection to the dragons? Was this some latent human ability, long hidden, finally awakened? But no one could explain why the dragons, creatures bred to kill, now watched him with reverence. And when the child reached the smallest dragon, a dwarf albino with scales like spun glass, it bent its head, nudging him gently. Gasps erupted from the observers. The child had not merely survived. He had tamed the untamable, and in doing so, shattered every expectation of human weakness. Reyna Vox knew the galaxy would never see humans the same way again. News spread faster than light. Military strategists, alien councils, and even ancient powers, long dormant, turned their gaze to the human colonies. The question was no longer if humans could survive. The question was how far they could reach, how boldly, how cunningly, in a universe that had never known a species like them. Yet the child yawned, stretching tiny arms, oblivious of the cosmic attention he commanded. And then, just as the observers thought the moment could not grow stranger, the dragons began to move, not aggressively, not as predators. They walked, flew, and circled the child, forming a protective ring. The mountains trembled, not from dragons, but from the aura of power and potential that emanated from a single human infant. Colonel Vox realized the first rule of this new reality. Humans were no longer prey. Humans were a force. And this child, this tiny, seemingly fragile human, was their proof. The universe had been warned. Yet none of them, not even Reyna Vox, understood what was coming next. Because in the shadows beyond the draconic wilds, something ancient stirred. Something that had slept through the rise and fall of stars, indifferent to civilizations. Until now, the dragons hissed warnings in a language older than most galaxies. The infant laughed. The shadows in the draconic wilds shifted, thick and alive, curling around the jagged crystal spires like fingers reaching for something long lost. Something immense, something ancient, something that had slept for eons beneath the barren peaks, had finally noticed a human. The dragons stiffened, scales rattling like glass in a storm, their hisses sharp enough to shred the thin mist around them. The child remained unafraid. He crawled forward, tiny hands brushing against the closest dragon's horn, and the creature, instead of recoiling, lowered its head, eyes glowing faintly in a pattern that resembled warning symbols humans could never decode. From the shadows, the ground trembled, not a quake, but a living pulse, rhythmic and hungry. Colonel Reyna Vox, observing through the scope of her fleet's orbital satellite, tightened her grip. "This is not natural," she whispered. The humans in the outer colonies had faced marauding aliens, rogue AI, and even the legendary void leviathans. But this was beyond comprehension. It was not merely a threat. It was judgment. A titanic form began to emerge from the darkness. Its scales shimmered like blackened obsidian streaked with veins of molten light. Eyes, thousands of them, blinked independently, scanning the infant, the dragons, and the observers. Its roar rolled to the mountains, a sound that could shatter stone and silence life. And yet, the human child did not cry. He clapped his tiny hands, cooing as though he were greeting a friend. The albino dwarf dragons bristled, wings flaring, yet did not attack. They formed a protective circle around the child, their tails lashing, claws scratching the ground, a living fortress. The ancient being bent closer, and the humans watching could see the enormity of it. Easily 100 meters tall, its presence alone bending reality, its body humming with power that predated human civilization by millennia. It spoke, or rather, it resonated, through the minds of every being in the vicinity. You are not as I expected. The dragons hissed and shook, but the child's laughter echoed over it all. Curious, the being continued, a creature so small, so fragile, yet you command beasts older than stars themselves. Raina Vox's hands shook. This is the first contact with something not just alien, but fundamentally godlike, she whispered. The child, in a movement that was entirely his own, reached for the largest dragon. It knelt, lowering its massive head so the infant could sit upon its neck. The observers gasped. In that moment, the balance of fear shifted. The titans of the galaxy had learned to fear humans, but never in this way. The being studied him, eyes like molten mirrors reflecting the galaxy, and for the first time, it hesitated. Why? Do you not fear me? It demanded, voice shaking the very air. The child's laugh was the answer. Then he did something extraordinary. He pointed toward the being, and the three dragons emitted a synchronized roar, a frequency so precise it resonated with the titanic creature's own energy. The ground quaked violently. Mountains splintered, but the human did not flinch. He was tiny, but the force emanating from him and the dragons, his command over them, was undeniable. The being tilted its colossal head, trying to understand. Humans, it murmured, and for the first time in millennia it felt challenged. The child clapped again. The dragons charged forward, not to attack, but to encircle, to demonstrate control, to assert dominance in a language older than words. And the being recoiled not in fear, but in caution, recognizing that the infant represented an intelligence that could not be measured by size, strength, or age. From orbit, Raina Vox and her fleet prepared to intervene, but she hesitated. Humans, even as infants, were capable of feats that defied expectation, that defied reason. The child giggled, reaching for a crystal spire, and as his tiny hand touched it, the structure vibrated, releasing a pulse of energy that illuminated the surrounding mountains in blinding white light. The titanic being flinched. Impressive, it rumbled, yet still insufficient. It lunged, not with claws or teeth, but with a wave of mental force that twisted the landscape, uprooted mountains, and hurled debris like meteors. The dragons roared and countered, forming a shield of synchronized energy, their scales acting as conduits, amplifying the child's latent power. And the human, still seated on the smallest dragon, raised his tiny fist. A beam of light shot from him, not destructive, but commanding, resonating with the very life force of the being. The being stumbled, unaccustomed to confrontation with a species so young yet so unyielding. Raina Vox gasped. Humans do not yield, she whispered. They adapt. They overcome. They thrive where others perish. The titanic entity retreated slightly, circling, recalibrating, assessing the child. You defy nature itself, it rumbled. The dragons hissed warnings, their tails whipping the air like pendulums of pure energy. The child laughed again, crawling from the back of the dragon onto the ground. The being considered destroying him, ending the anomaly, but a strange instinct held it back. Humans were unpredictable. Intelligence beyond size, courage beyond instinct, resilience beyond reason. The being realized, as the child sat upright and blinked at it with wide, innocent eyes, that this was no ordinary species. It was a challenger, a contender for dominance in a universe that had grown complacent. The child waved. The dragons flared their wings, surrounding him in a halo of shimmering white. Reyna Vox whispered into her calm, "They are not merely surviving. They are commanding. The universe has never seen anything like this. Never." The being hesitated again. A choice presented itself. Destroy this fragile anomaly, or observe and learn. It chose to observe. And in that moment, the child laughed, the dragons roared, and a new chapter in human history began. Because humans, even in their youngest form, had proven something the galaxy would never forget. They do not bend. They do not break. They redefine the impossible. The Titanic being withdrew into the shadows, but not entirely. It would watch, it would test, it would return, but it had learned something crucial. Humans are not mere prey in the universe. They're architects of destiny. The infant clapped again, crawling forward, and the dragons followed, a trio of guardians bound in by loyalty, awe, and something far older than instinct. Reyna Vox realized, with a thrill and a terror unlike anything she had felt before, that the true story was only beginning. The galaxy would soon face humans in ways it had never imagined. Challenges more impossible than thought, threats older than stars, powers beyond comprehension, and yet humanity would rise to each, as it always had. The child looked up at the horizon, where the first stars of a distant system blinked against the void. He smiled, and in that smile was a promise that humans, in their courage, intelligence, and sheer audacity, would claim their place among the cosmos. The ancient being, hiding in the shadows, considered this new equation. Humans were not ordinary. They were dangerous. They were brilliant. And they were unyielding. The mountains trembled again, but this time in anticipation, because the galaxy was about to witness something unprecedented. A species small in form, yet immense in potential, challenging the very fabric of existence. And the human child, with the 3 albino dwarf dragons, was at the center of it all. The shadows began to stir elsewhere, distant but deliberate, as if the universe itself was awakening to the presence of something new, something unstoppable. The child reached the sky, and a pulse of energy radiated from him, faint but undeniable. Stars shifted, galaxies paused, and somewhere deep in the cosmic abyss, something ancient muttered, "So, the humans awaken." The dragon circled the child, wings beating with the rhythm of life itself, and the infant giggled once more, unaware of the magnitude of his presence, yet commanding it entirely. Colonel Reyna Vox observed from orbit as a child, now crawling to the jagged terrain, led the 3 albino dwarf dragons with an unspoken authority. Each step he took seemed to echo across the universe, carry with it a resonance that only a human could project, defiance in the face of impossibility. The distant shadows that had watched the draconic wild stirred again, moving with intent. Ancient beings, long dormant, whispered in unison across light years, sensing the rise of something neither star nor empire could contain. "They are not mere mortals," one ancient voice murmured, deep as a collapsing planet. "They are architects of change." The infant stopped at the base of a crystal spire, its surface fractured with jagged cracks that pulsed with an eerie violet energy. He reached for it, tiny fingers brushing the edges, and the crystals reacted instantly. Light poured outward, illuminating hidden pathways, opening doors that had been sealed for millennia. The dragons hissed and circled, but even they could not fully comprehend the magnitude of what was happening. Colonel Vox gritted her teeth. This is not just survival. This is evolution in motion. The infant stood, unsteady but resolute, atop a crystal platform that seemed to grow beneath his feet, responding to some unseen command. From the shadows, the colossal being that had retreated earlier stirred once more. It was not alone. Massive shapes moved behind it. Ancient predators, remnants of civilizations that had risen and fallen before humans learned to walk. The galaxy's oldest hunters were returning, and yet the child remained unconcerned. He clapped his hands. The dragons roared in response, a sound so precise it resonated across the spectrum of reality itself. The predators froze, instinctively recognizing a force beyond their comprehension. Colonel Vox could feel the tension in her bones from orbit. "This is humanity," she said, almost to herself. "Not because they survive, but because they adapt, they think, and they claim what others fear to touch." The infant stepped forward, and the crystal beneath him flared white-hot, emitting a pulse that rippled outward, shaking mountains, shattering cliffs, and knocking loose the obsidian fragments of the draconic wilds. The predators roared, but the dragons roared louder, encircling the child in a moving fortress of energy and fury. The ancient being stepped forward, massive claws scraping the jagged ground. "You defy reason," it rumbled, eyes blazing with the light of dying stars. The child laughed. It was a sound that pierced the void, a sound that carried courage, intelligence, and the audacity to command life itself. And then the child did the impossible. He raised his tiny arms, and the dragons leapt forward in unison, their wings striking the air with a force that warped reality, creating vortexes of energy that lifted debris and scattered the ancient predators. The being faltered. It had never faced something like this. Never in the eons had it met a species that combined such raw courage with a cunning that could not be measured by size or power. The child crawled forward again, and with a single touch, the fractured crystal spire split further, sending tendrils of light snaking across the ground. These tendrils licked at the predators, not with destruction, but with precision, disabling their movements, restraining them without harm. Colonel Vox's breath caught. "They are not fighting in the conventional sense," she whispered. "They're strategizing instinctively, evolving in real time." The predators roared in frustration, but the dragons moved faster, encircling the human child like living shields. The infant, eyes wide with curiosity, reached out to one of the predators, a massive creature with scales like black diamonds. The predator hissed and flinched, expecting attack, but the child simply touched its snout. A shockwave of calm rippled outward. The creature froze, confusion overtaking instinct. For the first time, it considered that maybe humans were not just prey. Maybe they were something else entirely. The child smiled, and the dragons roared in triumph. From orbit, Raina Vox shook her head in disbelief. "This is what I was told could not exist," she said. A human commanding creatures that had been untouchable for eons, and not through fear, but through mastery. The predators hesitated, and the ancient being spoke again. "You are an anomaly," it said, voice like a galaxy collapsing. "I have seen civilizations rise and fall, empires burn, and stars die, yet never one like you." The child giggled and reached for the largest predator, and to the astonishment of everyone watching, it knelt. Colonel Vox's mind raced. This is more than courage. This is intelligence. This is humanity proving that size, age, and power do not define supremacy. Only will, only audacity, only adaptation. Only humanity can do this. The predators began to move in ways that defied instinct, learning, adapting, responding, not through command, but through the subtle influence of the human child and the dragons. The being took a step back, reconsidering its approach. "Perhaps there is more to this species than I understood," it muttered. The child waved again, and a ripple of energy emanated, lifting the predators gently into the air. They were not subdued. They were being taught, guided, and integrated into a new order. Colonel Vox realized the enormity of what she was witnessing. This was not merely survival. This was a human defining a new paradigm of existence in a universe that had grown stagnant with complacency. And it was only the beginning. From the shadows beyond the spires, more ancient creatures began to awaken. Tentacles of cosmic energy rippled through the sky. Stars dimmed and flared in recognition of the human presence, and distant alien empires began to take notice. The child, oblivious of the attention, clapped again, and the dragons responded in perfect synchrony. Each beat of their wings, each roar, each movement resonated with the pulse of the universe itself. The predators, once feared and unstoppable, began to obey instinctually, following the rhythm of the dragons and the infant. Colonel Vox could not tear her eyes away. "This is not just victory," she whispered. "This is humanity rewriting the rules of engagement across the stars." The ancient being studied the child, scanning for weaknesses, for mortality, for the tiniest fraction of imperfection. It found none, not in the child, not in the dragons, not in the human spirit that radiated through the alien predators. It realized then that humans were not merely survivors. They were catalysts, creators, conquerors, not by force alone, but by ingenuity, courage, and the audacity to face impossible odds. The child giggled again, crawling forward, and with a simple gesture, the predators knelt in unison. The dragons flared their wings, creating a shield of light that stretched across the jagged mountains. The ancient being muttered, "Perhaps the universe itself underestimated them." From orbit, Raina Vox transmitted to the fleet. Record this. Every colony, every world, every species must know what humans can achieve. The galaxy is witnessing the birth of a new order, led by one child and 3 dragons. And if this is the beginning, then what humanity will become is unimaginable. The shadows moved, deeper and faster, as if the universe itself was preparing for the human rise. And the child, with 3 albino dwarf dragons at his side, looked toward the horizon, where the first stars of a distant galaxy blinked like eyes opening for the first time in eternity. He reached upward. The draconic wilds quaked under the combined presence of the human child and the 3 albino dwarf dragons. The ancient predators, now subdued yet restless, circled the infant like shadows hesitant to touch the sun. But the shadows beyond the mountains stirred again. This time they were deliberate. A fleet unlike any the galaxy had ever seen began to emerge from a void between stars. Ships carved from blackened crystals, lined with pulsating veins of unknown energy, move as one, a silent, coordinated wave of alien intent. Raina Vox, observing from orbit, felt her blood run cold. "This is not a patrol. This is an invasion," she whispered. And it was. The alien fleet advanced, scanning the mountains, assessing the human presence, and preparing to unleash destruction on the infant and his dragons. Yet the child remained unconcerned. He crawled forward, tiny fingers brushing the crystalline ground, his gaze unwavering, his smile pure. The dragons responded instantly. Wings flared, creating a shield of energy that shimmered like liquid metal under the violet sky. Raina Vox gasped. "They are not reacting. They are controlling the battlefield instinctively," she said. The alien ship struck first, firing beams of concentrated energy that scorched the mountainside. The dragons countered, diving, twisting, and amplifying the child's latent command over the battlefield. Crystals beneath the infant pulsed, creating force fields that deflected the alien fire, redirecting it back toward the fleet with precision and devastating impact. The alien commanders blinked. They had faced countless worlds, species with technology spanning millennia, but nothing prepared them for this. A human child, directing not just dragons, but the very terrain itself, with intuitive precision beyond calculation. The child clapped his hands, and a wave of light surged outward. Mountains split, creating channels that guided the alien fire back into their own ranks. Ships exploded in a symphony of molten crystal and plasma, disintegrating before the astonished eyes of the invaders. One ship attempted to retreat, but the dragons were faster. A single beat of their wings summoned gusts of energy that shredded the vessel, scattering shards across the sky. The alien fleet faltered. They had underestimated humans, had underestimated the fusion of instinct, intelligence, and adaptability that defined the species. Raina Vox activated her fleet's communications. "All units, observe and record. This is human combat intelligence at its most primal and refined form. Learn from it, adapt to it, and survive it," she ordered. From the shadows beyond the battlefield, the ancient being that had observed the child spoke again. "You are unlike anything I have seen in eons. You wield chaos with elegance and instinct with purpose. Perhaps humanity deserves more than observation." The child giggled, crawling atop a fractured spire, and the dragons responded with a coordinated roar. Energy waves emanated from the infant, resonating with the very essence of the alien fleet. Ships began to spin uncontrollably, their systems destabilizing as the child's influence reached across the battlefield. Colonel Vox could not believe her eyes. Humans, they do not fight with firepower alone. They fight with their minds, with their will, with the very essence of life itself. She whispered. The aliens regrouped, sending a second wave, larger and more devastating than the first. But the child had grown bolder. He raised his tiny arms, and the dragons leapt into the sky, creating tornadoes of energy that swept the fleet like the ocean's sweeping sand. The crystalline mountains responded, channels of light and force forming traps that guided the alien ships into deadly vortexes. A single predator, once thought invincible, attempted to break the child formation. The infant reached out, and the creature froze, its instincts overridden by the child's presence. Even the most ancient and powerful beings recognized that this tiny human was no ordinary being. He was a nexus of courage, intelligence, and indomitable spirit. The alien fleet's command center activated, sending a psychic pulse toward the child, an attempt to destabilize him. But the child laughed. A simple sound, yet it resonated across the battlefield, counteracting the alien pulse with a frequency of pure human will. The dragons flared, amplifying it, and the pulse rebounded, striking the alien commanders directly. Systems failed. Shields collapsed. Commanders screamed silently as their minds struggled against a wave of human audacity. Reyna Vox's fleet moved cautiously closer, observing the child's influence. This is not a fight. They can win conventionally. Humans do not operate within the normal rules of engagement, she said. From a void, more shadows stirred. Ancient alien empires, long thought extinct, began to awaken, sensing the surge of human power. And yet, the child remained calm. He crawled forward, reaching for a jagged crystal spire. The spire reacted immediately, extending into a massive conduit of energy that linked him with the dragons, the predators, and even the terrain itself. The battlefield became a living extension of the infant's command. The alien fleet, no matter how advanced, no matter how prepared, found itself ensnared in a network of energy and instinct far beyond their understanding. Colonel Vox watched in awe. They do not just survive. They integrate, adapt, and dominate. This is not warfare. This is evolution manifested in battle, she whispered. The child stood atop the spire, arms raised, and the dragons roared in harmony. Energy waves surged outward, destabilizing alien weapons, disarming fleet formations, and even compelling predators to fight alongside him. The aliens attempted a final assault, but the child's command over the battlefield was absolute. Every weapon turned against its wielder. Every strategy anticipated. Every predator, every dragon, every crystal spire worked in perfect unison under the guidance of the human child. The alien commanders finally understood. This was not a child. This was humanity itself incarnate. An infant, yet the embodiment of a species that defied logic, defied probability, and would not be denied. Ships exploded. Mountains trembled. And across the battlefield, the human child clapped once more. The alien fleet was in disarray, retreating in the face of an opponent they could not predict, could not calculate, could not overcome. Colonel Vox exhaled, her voice barely a whisper. The universe has underestimated humans. It will never make that mistake again. From the shadows, the ancient being observed silently. You are remarkable, it admitted. The child giggled again, crawling forward, oblivious to the devastation and triumph around him. The dragons flared, their wings beating in perfect rhythm with the child's pulse, a living symphony of power, intelligence, and courage. The alien fleet had been repelled. The predators, now fully loyal, circled protectively. The child had not only survived, they had commanded the impossible, turned enemies into allies, and proven that humans, even in their smallest form, were a force the universe could not ignore. Colonel Vox transmitted to every human colony. Record this. Study this. Learn from this. Humanity has proven itself beyond survival. We are a species that adapts, overcomes, and dominates through courage, intelligence, and willpower. The galaxy has seen what one human child can do, and the message is clear. We will not be dismissed, we will not be conquered, and we will never stop evolving. The child, sitting atop a crystalline spire, reached toward the horizon, where new fleets of alien ships gathered, watching, learning, calculating. And somewhere deep in the cosmic abyss, ancient powers whispered. The humans awaken, and they are unlike anything the universe has ever faced. The dragons roared in unison. The predators followed, and the child laughed, tiny yet commanding, as if the entire galaxy were merely a playground waiting for his next move. This was only the beginning. The shadows that had watched from the edge of the galaxy were moving. More fleets, Older empires and ancient cosmic entities stirred. They would come, and they would test humanity. But the child, with 3 albino dwarf dragons, represented something far greater than any weapon, any fleet, or any alien empire could predict. Humans were not merely survivors. Humans were catalysts of change. Humans were unstoppable. The alien fleets regrouped at the edge of the draconic wilds, their ships pulsating with energy that had once shattered entire worlds. Yet none dared advance fully. The child, sitting atop the smallest albino dwarf dragon, blinked toward them. He did not know fear. He did not know doubt. He only knew curiosity, and that was enough to command the universe. The dragons flared, their wings cutting the wind into jagged crescendos. Predators that had once hunted planets now followed his subtle gestures. Colonel Reyna Vox watched from orbit, her hands gripping the console so tightly the knuckles shone white. "They are not just fighting," she said, voice barely a whisper. "They are rewriting the rules of warfare, the laws of physics, the very definition of survival. Humanity does not simply exist. It dominates by ingenuity, by instinct, by will." The alien fleet unleashed their next wave. Missiles of black crystal, plasma arcs that could boil oceans, energy beams designed to fracture mountains. The child raised his tiny hand. The dragon spun into formation, creating spirals of shimmering energy. The very terrain of the draconic wilds responded, jagged crystal spires bending, twisting, forming barriers and conduits that redirected the alien attacks back upon their own vessels. Ships exploded. Aliens screamed telepathically as their systems fried and their formations collapsed. Colonel Vox exhaled. "They underestimated humans," she said. "Again, and like always, they will pay for it." From the shadows beyond the battlefield, ancient cosmic entities stirred. They had watched civilizations rise and fall. They had observed empires shatter under the weight of their own hubris. But humans were unpredictable. The child giggled, tiny and innocent, yet carrying the authority of a species that had learned to conquer the impossible. He crawled forward, and the dragons flared, energy rippling outward. Predators, once thought untouchable, moved in unison, defending, attacking, protecting, guided by the child's instinctual genius. The alien fleet attempted a coordinated strike, sending psychic waves designed to disrupt thought and sow panic. The child waved, and the ground beneath the fleet shimmered. Their waves were not destroyed. They were redirected, turned into conduits of energy that strengthened the child's influence over the battlefield. Ships spun uncontrollably, crashing into one another, weapons overloaded, exploding in dazzling arcs of light. The predators struck with precision, dismantling the aliens' remaining formations, while the dragons carved the void with wings, slicing like blades of light. Colonel Vox's fleet moved closer, awed. "They do not merely fight," she whispered. "They adapt. They evolve. Every human instinct, every child's gesture, ripples to the battlefield and reshapes reality itself. This is beyond comprehension." The aliens attempted to retreat, but the child's influence reached across kilometers, across the battlefield, even into the void. Ships refused to flee. They became trapped in a lattice of energy, a web of instinct and adaptation, entirely human in origin yet cosmic in scale. One of the alien commanders, a creature with a mind older than the stars, reached out psychically, trying to probe the child's thoughts. The child laughed, a sound that shattered logic, that rippled through the cosmos, reversing psychic intrusion and sending the alien commander into a frenzy of confusion. The dragons roared. Predators attacked in perfect synchrony. The alien fleet crumbled under the weight of strategy, instinct, and human audacity. Colonel Vox exhaled deeply. "This is not a battle," she said. "This is a demonstration. Humanity does not merely survive threats. Humanity transforms threats into opportunity. Humanity converts chaos into triumph. From the distant shadows, an ancient force stirred, a being older than galaxies, wrapped in coils of living darkness, observed with interest. It had ruled empires, destroyed civilizations, and wielded powers that humans could not begin to comprehend. And yet it hesitated. This small human child, perched atop 3 dragons, commanded forces that even it could not predict. It whispered into the void. So, this is what humans are capable of. They are not merely clever. They are audacious. They are unstoppable. The child clapped his tiny hands, and the dragons flared in response, summoning a wave of energy that lit the draconic wilds like the dawn of a new star. The alien remnants tried one last assault, sending their most powerful weapon, a crystal beam capable of disintegrating mountains. The child raised both hands. The dragons circled overhead, their wings generating vortices of energy. The crystal spire beneath the child pulsed violently, creating a counterwave that absorbed the alien weapon and redirected it toward the fleet in spectacular arcs of plasma and crystal shards. The aliens fled, scattering into the void. The child, unscathed, crawled forward, curious and laughing, and the dragons roared in affirmation. Colonel Vox's voice shook as she transmitted to the colonies. Humanity has proven itself. The impossible bends before us. The galaxy has been reminded of what is always underestimated. Humans are not prey. Humans are architects of reality, conquerors of chaos, and the universe will learn to respect them or be destroyed by them. From the shadows, the ancient being finally stepped forward, massive claws scraping the crystalline ground. "You are remarkable," it admitted. The child giggled and reached out, touching one of the elder predators, calming it with an instinctual authority no species should have possessed at such an age. The dragons flared again, surrounding the child in a protective circle that shimmered with energy visible across the stars. The alien fleets, the predators, and even the ancient being recognized something fundamental. This was not just a child. This was humanity incarnate. It was a species capable of ingenuity, courage, and intelligence that defied the very laws of nature. It was a species that transformed vulnerability into power. And the galaxy would never forget it. The child, reaching toward the horizon, radiated a pulse of energy that resonated with the universe itself. Stars blinked, galaxies trembled, and ancient empires that had long slept in the void stirred, sensing the awakening of a force they could not contain. The dragons roared in unity. The predators followed, and the child laughed again, tiny yet commanding, as if the universe itself were a playground waiting for his next move. Colonel Vox realized then that humanity was not merely fighting to survive. Humanity was ascending. Every battle, every encounter, every impossible challenge was a proof. Humans adapt, they overcome, they dominate. And this child, this tiny beacon of courage, intelligence, and indomitable will, was only the beginning. From orbit, the human fleet prepared for the next stage. The galaxy was not done testing humanity, but humanity, guided by the child and the dragons, was ready. For every threat, every ancient power, every alien empire, there was a human solution. And every solution was more audacious, more cunning, and more impossible than the universe dared to imagine. The child clapped once more. The dragons roared. The predators circled protectively. And somewhere deep in the void, a new equation formed. Humanity would no longer be underestimated. The stars themselves seemed to pause, waiting to see what humans would do next. And the story, the saga of audacity, courage, and intelligence that defined humanity, was far from over. The shadows beyond the draconic wilds were moving deeper and faster. More ancient empires stirred. More alien fleets gathered. More unimaginable challenges approached. But the child, with 3 albino dwarf dragons at his side, smiled. The child sat atop the largest albino dwarf dragon, tiny fingers curling around its crystalline horn. Below, the draconic wilds quaked from recent battles. Jagged spires fractured and were formed by the pulse of human and dragon energy. The alien fleets that had dared challenge him had scattered into the void, but the universe was far from silent. From the darkest reaches of the cosmos, ancient civilizations that had long believed humanity inconsequential were awakening. They stirred in their hidden empires, sensing a pulse unlike anything before, a combination of courage, intelligence, and raw adaptability that radiated from a single human infant. Colonel Raina Vox transmitted across the colonies, her voice steady but filled with awe. This is not an isolated event. The galaxy has underestimated us for centuries. Now they will see. Humans are not only survivors, they are innovators, strategists, and commanders of forces that no alien could control. Humanity will rise. The child clapped, tiny hands striking the air. The dragons flared their wings, energy surging outward like a living shield. Even the predators, now fully loyal, moved with perfect precision, responding to every gesture of the infant. From the shadows of the void, an enormous alien construct emerged, a ship the size of a moon lined with pulsating veins of dark energy, radiating power that dwarfed the fleets of entire civilizations. The ancient alien commanders had come, not for reconnaissance, but for annihilation. But the child did not flinch. He crawled forward, curious eyes tracking the massive vessel, and the dragons roared in unison, flaring energy that shimmered across the fractured mountains. The alien construct fired. Beams of concentrated energy tore through the air, cleaving mountains and vaporizing clouds of crystal dust. But the child raised his tiny hand, and the terrain responded. The jagged crystal spires bent, forming shields and conduits that redirected the energy back toward the approaching fleet with deadly precision. The dragons soared, striking the construct defenses in coordinated patterns, their claws and wings channeling the infant's latent command. Colonel Vox watched, barely breathing. "They are not fighting by force alone," she murmured. "They are rewriting the laws of engagement. Humans integrate instinct, intelligence, and environment into strategy. They do not react, they orchestrate." The alien construct unleashed psychic pulses, attempting to overwhelm the child and his dragon allies. The child giggled, tiny arms raised, and a pulse of pure human will radiated outward, neutralizing the psychic assault and redirecting it against the alien fleet. Ships shattered. Energy arcs cascaded in spectacular displays of light and destruction. Even the predators attacked with precision, disabling the alien fleet's auxiliary defenses. The ancient construct faltered. Its commanders, alien minds older than stars, realized their calculations had failed. They had underestimated humanity. The child laughed again, crawling along a crystal ridge, and the dragon surged forward, creating a vortex of energy that immobilized the fleet. Colonel Vox transmitted again, voice urgent but reverent. "Every fleet, every colony, every human alive must understand this. Humans do not fight like others. Humans adapt, manipulate, and dominate in ways that cannot be predicted. This is our nature. This is our advantage. The universe will recognize us, or it will perish in our wake." The alien construct attempted a final strike, a beam designed to annihilate the child and his dragon simultaneously. The child raised both arms. The dragon spun overhead, wings creating spirals of energy that amplified the child's latent power. The terrain itself responded, channels of crystal energy converging, forming a lattice of force that absorbed the attack and amplified it back toward the construct. Explosions tore through the void. Ships disintegrated in arcs of energy. The construct cracked, its systems failing under the precision and audacity of a single human child orchestrating forces far beyond his years. Colonel Vox watched with awe. "This is not mere combat," she whispered. "This is strategy incarnate. Humanity converts chaos into order. Humanity converts impossibility into victory. This is what makes us unique." The child, oblivious of the destruction and triumph around him, crawled forward, touching the crystal ground. The dragons flared, energy rippling across the battlefield. The predators obeyed, moving instinctively to protect him, creating a living army under the command of the smallest, youngest human in the galaxy. The alien commanders finally understood. They were not facing a child. They were facing humanity itself, distilled into a single, unstoppable force. Ships exploded. Mountains trembled, and the child laughed again. From orbit, Raina Vox transmitted to the fleet. Humanity has proven itself. Every threat, every impossible challenge, every ancient power can be overcome with courage, intelligence, and willpower. Record this. Study this. Learn from it. The universe will not underestimate us again. From the shadows beyond the draconic wilds, ancient entities stirred. They had watched civilizations rise and fall. They had witnessed stars die and empires crumble. But humans were different. Humans adapted, evolved, and triumphed in ways that defied expectation. The child, reaching toward the horizon, radiated energy that rippled through the cosmos, awakening empires. stirring ancient fleets and alerting every hidden threat that humanity had arrived. The dragons roared in perfect unison. The predators followed, and the child giggled, tiny yet commanding, as if the universe itself were merely a playground waiting for his next move. Colonel Vox realized the truth. Humans were not just surviving the galaxy. Humans were rewriting it. Every battle, every encounter, every impossible challenge was proof. Humans adapt, overcome, and dominate. And this child, this nexus of courage, intelligence, and indomitable will, was a herald of humanity's future. The alien construct was destroyed. The remaining fleet fled, scattering into the void, carrying news of a species that could not be ignored. The predators circled the child, fully loyal. The dragons flared again, wings creating a shimmering shield that stretched across the fractured mountains. And the child laughed, reaching for the sky, tiny but commanding, a living proof that humanity was unstoppable. From orbit, Reyna Vox sent the final transmission. Humanity is no longer a minor player in the cosmos. Humanity is a force. Humanity is inevitable. And this child is the embodiment of that truth. The galaxy will watch and it will learn. Humans are not to be underestimated. Ever. The stars themselves seemed to pause. Galaxies trembled. Ancient empires stirred, sensing the rise of a species that would not yield. The draconic wilds lay in uneasy silence. Mountains splintered, crystals pulsing with residual energy. The alien fleets that had dared challenge the child had fled, scattering across the void like frightened insects. Yet the galaxy was far from still. From the farthest reaches of space, signals, ancient, encrypted, impossibly old, began converging toward the draconic wilds. These were not normal signals. They were the calls of civilizations that had ruled galaxies, empires older than stars, powers that had long thought humanity irrelevant. And now, humanity was no longer irrelevant. The child sat atop the largest albino dwarf dragon, tiny fingers tracing the jagged ridges of its horn. The dragon circled protectively, wings creating storms of shimmering energy that danced across the broken terrain. Predators once feared across countless star systems now obeyed his subtle gestures, forming a living phalanx that could rival entire fleets. Colonel Reyna Vox watched from orbit, her console blinking with incoming data. "This is not merely survival," she whispered. "This is mastery. Humans do not merely exist. They orchestrate, manipulate, and dominate every aspect of the battlefield, even at a scale beyond comprehension." The void trembled. From the darkness between galaxies, massive shapes emerged, ships that had long ruled entire sectors, weapons older than the oldest stars. The ancient alien empires had come to test the humans directly. The child tilted his head, blinking innocently at the vast armada, and the dragons roared. The predators followed. From orbit, Reyna Vox gasped. They are not reacting, they are anticipating. They are not surviving, they are strategizing instinctively. Humanity does not wait for opportunity. They create it. The alien fleets fired. Energy beams tore through space, shaking the broken mountains, scorching the skies. The dragons responded instantly, weaving between blasts, flaring their wings in perfect synchrony with the child's gestures. The child raised a tiny hand. The fractured crystal spires beneath them pulsed, forming conduits that absorbed the alien energy and redirected it into devastating arcs of force. Ships exploded. Massive predators moved like guided weapons, taking down enemy vessels with precision no algorithm could replicate. The alien commanders realized their miscalculation. Humans were not merely combatants. They were catalysts. Every action, every gesture, every breath from the child sent ripples to the battlefield, bending reality, redirecting energy, and reshaping the engagement entirely. Colonel Vox transmitted to the fleet. "Observe. Record. Humanity fights not with overwhelming force alone, but with intelligence, adaptation, and instinct. Every step they take is both offensive and defensive. This is what makes them unbeatable." The child giggled, crawling along a crystal ridge. The dragons flared overhead, generating a vortex of energy that immobilized ships mid-flight. The predators attacked in perfect synchrony, dismantling shields, disabling weapons, and herding the enemy like a shepherd commanding a galaxy. The alien fleet attempted psychic assaults, waves of mental force designed to break minds, to destabilize the child and the dragons. The child laughed. A simple sound, tiny yet infinitely potent, resonated across space, neutralizing the psychic waves and redirecting them at the alien fleet. Colonel Vox could barely comprehend what she was witnessing. They are not just human. They are a force of nature. They convert chaos into order, vulnerability into power, and instinct into strategy beyond calculation. The alien commanders ordered retreat, but it was too late. The child had already extended his influence. The dragons flared, the predators struck, and the terrain itself moved in response to the child's energy. Entire ships were dismantled before they could escape. The ancient alien leaders realized a horrifying truth. This was not a fight they could win. This was humanity asserting dominance over the cosmos itself. The child clapped his hands again. The dragons roared. The predators circled protectively. And the universe trembled. From orbit, Reyna Vox transmitted the new directive to all human colonies. This is not a warning. This is proof. Humanity has risen beyond fear, beyond threat, beyond expectation. We will not merely survive. We will dominate. We will outthink, outfight, and outlast every challenge the universe dares present. Humanity is inevitable. Humanity is unstoppable. From the void, the whispers began. Ancient entities, long dormant, stirred with recognition. The stars themselves seemed to hold their breath, waiting to see what humans would do next. And the child, tiny yet commanding, reached for the horizon. Energy pulsed outward, waves that resonated across light years, announcing the arrival of humanity as a galactic force. The alien fleets, the ancient predators, the cosmic entities, all recognized it. Humanity could no longer be ignored. Colonel Vox stared at the child, awe and fear mingling in equal measure. They do not merely survive, she whispered. They transform everything in their path. This child, this one human embodies the essence of our species. Courage, intelligence, ingenuity, and willpower. The child laughed, and the dragons flared in response. The predators moved with calculated precision, forming a living army of instinct, strategy, and allegiance to human. From the shadows of the void, an ancient power that had consumed galaxies paused. It had ruled, destroyed, and commanded civilizations beyond count. And yet, it hesitated before a human child. This was not fear, it was calculation. The child, oblivious of the cosmic attention, clapped his hands. Mountains shimmered. The skies lit with energy. The universe waited, because humanity had arrived. And the story, the saga of audacity, intelligence, courage, and indomitable will, was only beginning. The shadows moved. More fleets, older empires, and incomprehensible forces stirred. They would come. They would test humanity. They would attempt to break the child and his dragons. But humanity, small yet unyielding, had proven something fundamental. They do not yield. They do not break. They redefine the impossible. The draconic wilds have fallen into a hushed, awe-filled quiet. The alien fleets that had once threatened annihilation had fled, scattered across the void, carrying tales of the infant who commanded dragons and reshaped the battlefield with instinct alone. The predators, once terrifying and untouchable, now moved in perfect unison around the child, their massive forms glowing faintly under the light of fractured crystals. The albino dwarf dragons flared their wings, stirring winds that whisper across the jagged peaks, sending sparks of energy into the atmosphere. The child, no longer just a symbol of human potential but a tangible force of it, crawled slowly to the edge of a towering crystal spire. His tiny fingers brushed against the surface, and energy pulsed outward in waves that resonated through the mountains across the sky, and even into the void beyond. Colonel Reyna Vox, observing from orbit, felt her chest tighten. This is what humans are, she murmured. Not just survivors, not just fighters, but something far greater. Humans are architects of the impossible, engineers of survival, and harbingers of change. The child reached toward the horizon, where distant galaxies gleamed faintly like scattered jewels in the darkness of space. He did not move fast. He did not need to. Even at his smallest, His presence commanded attention, and his influence extended further than any weapon, any fleet, any alien empire could have calculated. The dragons stirred, their wings beating a rhythm that seemed to echo the heartbeat of the child himself. The predators followed suit, forming a living shield around the infant and his dragons, their loyalty absolute, unshakable. From the void, the remnant of ancient alien empires stirred uneasily. Ships shimmered in hyperspace, massive and silent, yet hesitant to advance. The galaxy had learned a new law. Humans are not to be underestimated, and this child, small and innocent, had become the embodiment of that law. Colonel Vox transmitted a message to all human colonies, her voice steady, resolute, almost trembling with awe. Humans are no longer merely a species of this galaxy. We are a force of nature. We will survive. We will adapt. We will outthink and outlast every challenge thrown against us. The galaxy has witnessed today what humanity is capable of, and we will ensure that no threat ever forgets it. The child's gaze shifted, curious, toward the largest predator that had once roamed the stars as a killing machine. He reached out. The predator froze, then bowed slightly, as if acknowledging the child's authority, not as a ruler, but as something far more profound, a symbol of humanity's audacity. The dragons roared in affirmation, sending ripples of energy into mountains, and the light reflected across the fractured crystals, casting a glow so radiant it seemed as if the draconic wilds had become the center of the universe. From orbit, Colonel Vox's eyes glistened. The galaxy has never seen this, and it may never see it again, she whispered. Yet, deep within the void, something ancient and immense observed. A being older than galaxies, wrapped in coils of darkness and starlight, hovered silently, sensing the pulse of human audacity. It had witnessed civilizations rise and fall, worlds burn, and stars collapse. And yet, this small human child, this seemingly insignificant creature, had shifted the balance of power, commanding dragons, predators, and the very terrain itself, bending reality with instinct and intelligence. It whispered into the void, a voice older than time itself. Perhaps humans are unlike anything I have ever encountered. The child, unaware of the cosmic attention he had drawn, clapped his tiny hands. The dragons flared, wings beating in perfect harmony. The predators roared, circling protectively. The energy of the draconic wilds pulsed with life, a living monument to humanity's indomitable will. In that moment, something extraordinary occurred. The fractured crystals beneath the child's hands began to hum, resonating with a frequency that extended beyond the planet, into the very fabric of space. Stars blinked, galaxies shimmered. It was as if the universe itself paused, acknowledging a force it could not contain. Colonel Vox could feel it in her bones, the shift in the balance of power, the unmistakable rise of humanity as a galactic entity. Humans are no longer minor players, she said, voice barely audible. They are catalysts. They are architects of the impossible. And this child, he is the embodiment of everything we will become. The child stood, unsteady but resolute, atop the largest crystal spire. He raised his arms, tiny yet commanding, and the dragons flared their wings in unison, sending arcs of energy into the sky. The predators moved with precision, forming a living wall that shimmered with strength, loyalty, and strategy beyond any calculation. The alien fleets that had fled, the cosmic predators that had watched from the shadows, and the ancient powers that had slumbered for eons all recognized the same truth. Humanity had arrived. It would not be stopped. It would not be underestimated. It would not fail. From the shadows of distant galaxies, more observers stirred. Species that had never interacted with humans before, powers that had never known fear. And yet, even they hesitated. For the pulse of humanity radiated through the cosmos, undeniable and absolute. Colonel Vox watched the child for what felt like an eternity. He is not just a child, she whispered. He is humanity itself, distilled into its purest form. Courage, intelligence, curiosity, and the will to survive. The galaxy will learn what it means to face humans, and it will never be the same again. The child clapped his hands again, a sound that echoed to the mountains, across the void, and into the hearts of every observer. The dragons roared in perfect harmony. The predators responded, moving with flawless precision. And the stars themselves seemed to respond, flickering with a brilliance that mirrored the pulse of life, courage, and indomitable human spirit. A subtle shift occurred in the universe, a recognition that a new era had begun. Humans, once considered fragile and insignificant, were now architects of the cosmos. They were creators, warriors, strategists, and pioneers in a universe filled with impossibility. And the child, the tiny, laughing human who had slept with 3 albino dwarf dragons and commanded impossible forces, was their herald. Colonel Vox sent a final transmission to all human colonies. Record this. Learn from it. Humanity has proven itself in ways the universe could not predict. We are not mere survivors. We are innovators, conquerors, and leaders. We will rise to every challenge, overcome every threat, and forge a path that no species can follow. The age of humanity has begun. The child reached toward the horizon, toward the distant galaxies that had once seemed unreachable. His tiny hands glowed with energy, touching the fabric of space in ways no human had ever done before. The dragons flared, sending arcs of light that shimmered like lightning across the jagged landscape. The predators moved in protective formation, a living testament to loyalty, intelligence, and instinct guided by human ingenuity. And somewhere deep in the void, the ancient being that had observed everything finally spoke. Humans, they are unlike anything I have ever known. Perhaps they are not to be feared, but revered. The child laughed, a tiny, pure sound, and the energy of the draconic wilds pulsed outward, a beacon visible across the stars. The universe had been forever changed. Colonel Vox exhaled, tears in her eyes. "This is it," she whispered. "This is what humans are meant to be." The stars shimmered, galaxies trembled, and the child, with 3 albino dwarf dragons at his side, tiny yet commanding, smiled toward the horizon. The predators roared, the dragons roared, and humanity, small, audacious, and indomitable, had taken its first true place in the galaxy. The universe had learned a lesson that could never be forgotten. Humans are unstoppable. Humans are unparalleled. Humans will rise. And this was only the beginning. The draconic wilds glowed with the energy of triumph, the pulse of courage, and the promise of endless possibilities. The child, his laughter echoing across the shattered mountains, had proven the impossible. Even the smallest human, guided by courage, intelligence, and indomitable will, could bend the universe to their understanding. And somewhere across the distant stars, alien fleets, ancient predators, and cosmic powers all waited, knowing that the humans were coming. Stronger, smarter, unstoppable. The child climbed atop the tallest spire, dragons flaring above him, predators circling below. He raised his arms, tiny yet commanding, and the pulse of humanity radiated outward, across the stars, across the galaxies, across the universe itself. And in that moment, the story, the saga of courage, ingenuity, and indomitable human spirit, reached its culmination. But the universe would never forget, and humanity's tale was only beginning its true ascent.